The asteroid floated in the cold darkness of space, far from Earth and far from anything the Vthkai Dominion considered important. It was just a rock with a small human outpost built into its surface. The outpost was called Forge 7, and from the outside, it looked like nothing special. A mining station, a forgotten place where humans dug for minerals and waited for supply ships. War Commander Celtrix stood on the bridge of his battlecruiser, the Crimson Fang, and studied the images his scouts had captured. He saw old equipment. He saw damaged communication arrays. He saw 40 humans moving slowly through gray corridors, wearing simple work clothes and carrying basic tools. "This is the target?" Celtrix asked, his 4 eyes narrowing with disappointment. "Yes, War Commander," his scout replied. "We observed them for 3 days. Minimal security. No military vessels. No planetary defense systems. They appear to be miners, nothing more." Celtrix made a sound of disgust. He had hoped for something more challenging. The Vthkai Dominion had conquered 37 species across the galaxy, and each conquest had been easier than the last. These humans were new to space travel. They had only left their home planet a few hundred years ago. They were children playing in a universe of predators. "How many warriors do we have?" Celtrix asked. 800, War Commander. All eager for battle. Celtrix almost laughed. 800 warriors against 40 miners. It would not be a battle. It would be a demonstration. The humans would surrender within minutes, and Celtrix would have a new outpost to present to the High Prelate. "Prepare for assault," he ordered. "We take the station intact. Kill anyone who resists." Deep inside Forge 7, Commander Lisa Garrett was running through her morning exercises when the alert came. She stopped mid-push-up and listened to the sound. It was a simple ping, the kind that meant a ship had entered their sensor range. She thought nothing of it at first. Supply ships came every few weeks, and sometimes military vessels passed through on patrol. But something about this ping felt wrong. Lisa stood up and walked to the command center, where Lieutenant Amy Chen Holloway was already studying her screens. Amy was young, barely 30 years old, but she had the sharpest mind in the unit. She could read data patterns the way other people read books. "What do we have?" Lisa asked. "Unknown vessel," Amy said. "Big one. It dropped out of hyperspace about 2 hours from our position." "Scheduled?" "No, Commander. And the energy signature does not match anything in our database." Lisa felt a familiar sensation in her stomach. It was not fear exactly, but something close to it. Anticipation mixed with caution. She had felt it many times before, in training exercises designed to push her and her team to their absolute limits. "Could be part of the drill," Lisa said. "Could be," Amy agreed. Admiral Webb did say this month's exercise would be different. Lisa nodded slowly. Forge 7 was not really a mining station. It was Earth's most classified training facility, where the best soldiers in the military came to prepare for scenarios that most people hoped would never happen. Alien invasion. First contact gone wrong. Situations where human survival depended on small teams, fighting against impossible odds. The 40 people stationed at Forge 7 were not miners. They were Blackfire Squadron, the most elite tactical unit Earth had ever produced. Each of them had passed tests that would break ordinary soldiers. Each of them could fight in any environment, with any weapon, against any enemy. But they had never faced a real alien threat. No human had. The training was all theoretical, based on simulations and worst-case projections. Lisa activated her communication device and called her senior officers to the command center. Sergeant Derek Cole arrived first, a large man with scars on his hands from years of working with explosives. He was followed by Corporal Nathan Brooks, their reconnaissance specialist, who moved so quietly that people often forgot he was in the room. "Situation?" Derek asked. "Unknown vessel approaching. Lisa said. Big enough to be a carrier or a battle cruiser. No identification signals. No response to our standard hails. Sounds like Admiral Webb is testing our protocols, Nathan said with a slight smile. That is what I thought, Lisa replied. But Amy says the energy signature does not match anything we have on file. The room went quiet. Everyone understood what that meant. Either Earth Command had developed entirely new technology for this drill, or the vessel was not from Earth at all. What are your orders, Commander? Derek asked. Lisa thought for a moment. The smart thing to do was treat this as real until proven otherwise. That was the Blackfire way. Assume the worst, prepare for everything, and hope you were wrong. Wake everyone up, she said. Full combat readiness in 30 minutes. I want defensive positions manned and emergency protocols ready to activate. And if it is just a drill? Nathan asked. Then Admiral Webb will be impressed by our response time. The soldiers moved quickly and quietly, their training taking over like muscle memory. Within 20 minutes, Forge 7 transformed from a sleepy outpost into a fortress. Weapons were checked. Armor was secured. Communication lines were established between every section of the facility. Lisa stood in the command center and watched the unknown vessel grow larger on her screen. It was close enough now that she could see its shape. Long and angular, with sharp edges that reminded her of a predator's teeth. It was beautiful in a terrifying way, like a shark gliding through dark water. Commander, Amy said, her voice suddenly tense. I am detecting smaller craft launching from the main vessel. Dozens of them. They are heading directly for us. Lisa's heart beat faster, but her hands stayed steady. Any communication? None. They are ignoring all hails. The first explosion hit the outer dome before Lisa could give another order. The entire facility shook, and alarms began screaming through every corridor. Lights flickered. Dust fell from the ceiling. Contact, Derek said calmly, as if reporting the weather. Eastern airlock is breached. Lisa took a deep breath and made her decision. Drill or not, simulation or reality, her people would fight. All units, she said into her communicator, her voice clear and strong. This is Commander Garrett. We have hostile contact. Treat all unknown forces as enemy combatants. Engage at will and fall back to secondary positions as needed. She paused, looking at the faces of her officers. They showed no fear, only focus. Today we find out if our training was worth something, she said. Make it count. The battle for Forge 7 had begun. The Vthkai warriors poured through the eastern airlock, expecting to find scared miners hiding behind equipment. They found bullets instead. Corporal Tiffany Riz was waiting in the shadows with her rifle raised when the first alien stepped through the breach. She had never seen anything like it before. Tall, covered in dark scales, with 4 eyes that glowed yellow in the emergency lighting. It carried a weapon that hummed with energy, and it moved with the confidence of a predator entering a cage full of prey. Tiffany shot it twice in the chest. The alien fell backward, surprise frozen on its face. 2 more came through behind it, and Tiffany dropped them both before they could raise their weapons. Her training had prepared her for this moment. Identify the target. Aim for center mass. Pull the trigger. Move to the next target. She did not think about the fact that she was killing beings from another world. She only thought about protecting her team. 3 down, she reported through her communicator. More incoming. Across the facility, similar scenes played out in every corridor. The Vthkai expected easy victory. They found coordinated resistance instead. Every doorway became a kill zone. Every corner held a soldier ready to fight. War Commander Celtrix watched the battle reports from his cruiser with growing confusion. His warriors were dying. Not in large numbers yet, but far more than he had expected. The miners were shooting back with accuracy that seemed impossible for untrained workers. "What is happening down there?" he demanded. "Resistance is stronger than anticipated," his communications officer replied nervously. "The humans appear to have military-grade weapons." "Miners do not have military weapons," Celtrix growled. "Send the second wave. Crush them quickly." Deep inside Forge 7, Commander Lisa Garrett moved through the corridors with Sergeant Derek Cole at her side. They had fallen back from the command center to a more defensible position, letting the aliens push forward into terrain that favored the defenders. "How many did we count?" Lisa asked. "Over 100 through the eastern breach," Derek said. "More coming through the hangar bay. Could be several hundred total on the station now." Lisa processed the numbers. 40 against several hundred. Bad odds by any normal standard. But Blackfire Squadron did not operate by normal standards. "Have you identified their species?" she asked. "Negative. Nothing in any database. These are genuine aliens, Commander. This is not a drill." Lisa had already accepted that fact, but hearing it spoken aloud made it feel more real. Humanity's first hostile contact with an alien species, and it was happening in her facility to her people. "Then we treat it like every other exercise," she said. "Survive, adapt, win." Lieutenant Amy Chun Holloway's voice crackled through the communication system. "Commander, I managed to send a distress signal before they jammed our long-range communications. Earth Command received our message. Response time? At least 6 hours, probably more. We are on our own until then. 6 hours. An eternity in combat." Lisa looked at Derek, and he nodded grimly. They both understood what they needed to do. Hold the facility. Keep the team alive. Wait for rescue, on Earth. Admiral Marcus Webb stood in the command center of military headquarters and stared at his screens in horror. The distress signal from Forge 7 played on repeat, each word hitting him like a physical blow. Unknown hostile forces. Alien origin. Requesting immediate assistance. The training facility he had helped create was under real attack. The soldiers he had trained were fighting for their lives against an enemy humanity had never encountered. "Get me everything we have in that sector," Webb ordered. "Every ship, every fighter, every weapon. Move them now." "Sir, the fastest response force is 4 hours away," an officer replied. "Then they need to fly faster." Webb watched the tactical display and felt completely helpless. His best soldiers were trapped on an asteroid, facing an unknown number of aliens, with no backup coming for hours. All he could do was watch and hope. Inside Forge 7, the battle continued with terrible intensity. The Vthkai pushed deeper into the facility, paying for every meter with blood. They had expected the humans to break after the first assault. Instead, the humans fought harder. Sergeant Paul Dunham stood at a junction point with his heavy machine gun and cut down wave after wave of attackers. Brass casings piled up around his feet like golden snow. His arms ached from the recoil. But he did not stop firing. "They just keep coming," he said through gritted teeth. "Then we just keep shooting," Corporal Nathan Brooks replied from his position nearby. The aliens adapted slowly, learning to use cover and move in smaller groups. But every time they developed a new tactic, the humans countered it. This was what Blackfire Squadron trained for. This was their purpose. War. Commander Celtrix grew increasingly frustrated as the hours passed. He had committed 300 warriors to the assault, and nearly 100 had already fallen. The humans showed no signs of surrender. His tactical advisor, Sub-Commander Dreth, approached him with obvious hesitation. "War Commander, perhaps we should reconsider our approach." "Reconsider?" Celtrix's eyes flashed with anger. "We do not retreat from primitives." "I am not suggesting retreat," Dreth said carefully. "But these humans are not behaving like miners. Their tactics are too sophisticated. Their coordination is too precise. I believe we may have attacked a military installation. Celtrix dismissed the concern with a wave of his claw. They are humans. They cannot have military forces capable of standing against us. Press the attack. I want that facility secured before the next cycle. Dreth bowed and withdrew, but his doubts remained. Something was very wrong about this battle. The humans were not fighting like frightened workers defending their home. They were fighting like soldiers who had trained for this exact scenario. Back in the facility, Commander Garrett organized a strategic withdrawal to the intersections. The outer areas were lost, but that was acceptable. The inner corridors were narrower, harder to navigate for large groups, and filled with defensive positions that had been designed for exactly this kind of situation. Fall back to phase line 2, she ordered. Slow and steady. Make them pay for every step. Her soldiers obeyed with perfect discipline. They moved in pairs, covering each other, laying traps and obstacles as they retreated. The Vthkai followed, unaware that they were being led deeper into a maze of death. Corporal Tiffany Reyes passed Commander Garrett during the withdrawal, her uniform stained with alien blood. "How long do we need to hold?" she asked. "As long as it takes," Lisa replied. Tiffany nodded and kept moving. She did not need to ask what would happen if rescue never came. Every member of Blackfire Squadron knew the answer to that. They would fight until they could not fight anymore. The battle for Forge 7 was just beginning. 8 hours had passed since the first explosion. The Vthkai controlled the outer sections of Forge 7, but they had paid a terrible price for that ground. Nearly 200 warriors lay dead in the corridors, their bodies left where they fell. War Commander Celtrix could not understand it. His forces outnumbered the humans 20-1. They had superior technology, superior firepower, and centuries of combat experience. Yet every advance cost them more lives. "Report," he demanded from his command post aboard the Crimson Fang. "We have secured the hangar bay and the eastern quadrant," a field commander reported. "But the humans have retreated to the intersections. The corridors there are narrow and heavily defended. We are taking significant casualties with every push." "How many humans have we killed?" There was a pause. "Unknown, War Commander. We've found no human bodies." Celtrix felt a chill run through his scales. 200 of his warriors dead, and not a single confirmed human casualty. That was impossible. That was beyond impossible. "They are dragging away their dead," he said, trying to convince himself. "Hiding their losses to maintain morale." "Perhaps," the field commander agreed, though his voice carried doubt. Deep in the intersections of Forge 7, Commander Lisa Garrett conducted a quick count of her forces. All 40 members of Blackfire Squadron were still alive. 12 had injuries of various severity, but none were fatal. Corporal Tiffany Reyes had taken a plasma burn to her shoulder, and Sergeant Paul Dunham had shrapnel in his leg. But both refused to stop fighting. "We have been lucky," Lieutenant Amy Chun Holloway said quietly. "Luck has nothing to do with it," Lisa replied. "We trained for this." They did not. The inner corridors of Forge 7 had been designed specifically for defensive operations. Every corner was a potential ambush point. Every doorway could be sealed and reinforced. Every ventilation shaft was large enough for a human to crawl through, but too small for the larger Vthkai warriors. Nathan Brooks had mapped every inch of this facility during his years of training here. Now he used that knowledge to set traps that the aliens never saw coming. Tripwires connected to explosives. Motion sensors linked to automated turrets. False paths that led to dead ends where waiting soldiers could pick off confused enemies. "They are learning," Nathan reported after watching a group of Vthkai carefully check a corridor before advancing. "Getting more cautious." Good, Lisa said. Cautious enemies move slowly. Slow enemies give us time. Time was everything now. Earth Command had received their distress signal, and help was on the way. Every hour the Blackfire Squadron held was another hour closer to rescue. They just needed to survive. Private First Class Ryan Torres crouched in a narrow alcove with his sniper rifle and watched a group of aliens approach his position. He was 23 years old, the youngest member of the squadron, and this was his first real combat. His hands should have been shaking. They were not. The aliens moved in a tight formation, their weapons sweeping the corridor ahead of them. They had learned to be careful after losing so many warriors to ambushes. But they had not learned everything. Ryan waited until the lead alien was exactly 15 meters away. Then he fired. The first shot dropped the leader. The second shot caught another alien before it could react. The remaining 4 scrambled for cover, but Ryan had already moved. He slipped through a maintenance hatch and emerged in a parallel corridor, putting himself behind the aliens who were still looking for him. 3 more shots. 3 more kills. 6 down, Ryan reported calmly. Moving to position Delta. Across the facility, similar engagements played out in every sector. The humans refused to fight fair. They refused to stand and face the superior numbers of their enemy. Instead, they hit and ran, struck and vanished, killed and disappeared like ghosts. Sub-Commander Dreth picked his way through a corridor filled with Vthkai dead and felt true fear for the first time in his long military career. He had fought against dozens of species. He had seen warriors of all kinds fall before the might of the Dominion. But he had never seen anything like this. The humans were not just fighting. They were hunting. He found a terminal that still had power and began searching through the station's database. Most files were encrypted or corrupted, but he found fragments of training schedules, exercise reports, and equipment manifests. What he read made his blood run cold. "This is not a mining station," he whispered to himself. "This is where they train their warriors." He found references to something called Blackfire Squadron and read descriptions of their selection process. Only 1 in 10,000 human soldiers qualified for consideration. Only 1 in 100 of those passed the initial screening. The final training took years and pushed candidates beyond every physical and mental limit. The 40 humans defending this facility were not ordinary soldiers. They were the best warriors their species had ever produced. And the Vthkai had attacked them thinking they were minors. Dreth immediately contacted War Commander Celtrix. "War Commander, I have critical intelligence. We must withdraw. Withdraw." Celtrix's voice crackled with fury. "We do not withdraw from primitives. These are not primitives. This facility is a military training center. The humans here are elite soldiers, specifically trained for scenarios exactly like this one. We walked into their training ground and gave them a real enemy to fight. We need to leave before we lose everyone." Celtrix hesitated for the first time since the battle began. His pride demanded that he crush these humans and prove Vthkai's superiority. But his instincts were screaming that something had gone terribly wrong. "How elite?" he asked finally. "Their records indicate that these soldiers are trained to fight against superior numbers, superior technology, and superior firepower. They practice these scenarios every day. For them, this battle is just another exercise." Celtrix felt the weight of those words settle over him. His warriors were dying in a facility designed to teach humans how to kill alien invaders. Every trap, every ambush, every tactical decision the humans made came from years of preparation for this exact moment. "We cannot withdraw now," Celtrix said, though his voice had lost its certainty. "The High Prelate would never forgive such weakness. The High Prelate would prefer living warriors to dead ones," Dreth argued. "We can return with a larger force, proper intelligence, and a real battle plan. Continuing this assault is suicide. Before Celtrix could respond, his communications officer interrupted with urgent news. War Commander, we are detecting multiple hyperspace signatures approaching. Human military vessels. At least 5 ships, including 1 destroyer class. The rescue fleet had arrived. Celtrix stared at his tactical display and made his decision. All units, prepare for immediate withdrawal. We are leaving. But inside Forge 7, Commander Garrett had already anticipated this moment. And she had no intention of letting the enemy escape easily. All units, she said into her communicator. They are going to run. Do not let them leave without remembering us. The final phase of the battle was about to begin. The order to retreat spread through the Vthkai forces like fire through dry grass. Warriors who had been pushing forward suddenly turned and began moving toward the hangar bay and the breached airlocks. They abandoned their wounded. They abandoned their dead. They only thought about escape. Commander Lisa Garrett watched their movements through the facility's internal sensors and smiled grimly. Running enemies were vulnerable enemies. Her training had taught her that retreats often cause more casualties than advances, and she intended to prove that lesson true. All units, execute Protocol Ember Phase 2, she ordered. Cut off their escape routes. Drive them toward the central hub. Sergeant Derek Cole had been waiting for this moment. He triggered the explosive charges he had planted hours earlier, and entire sections of corridor collapsed behind the fleeing aliens. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, sealing off the direct paths to the hangar bay. The Vthkai found themselves funneled into a single route that led straight through the heart of the facility, straight into a kill zone. War. Commander Celtrix watched from his cruiser as his tactical display turned red with warning indicators. His warriors were trapped inside the human facility, cut off from their extraction points. The primitive miners he had planned to crush were systematically destroying his forces. Get them out, he ordered desperately. Blast through the walls if you have to. We cannot fire on the facility without risking our own troops, his weapons officer replied. They are too deep inside. Celtrix slammed his fist against his command console. He had walked into a trap designed by creatures he had dismissed as inferior. Now he was paying the price for his arrogance. Inside Forge 7, the Vthkai survivors stumbled into the central hub, a large open space that served as the primary training arena. It was the only path left to the hangar bay. They did not realize that this was exactly where the humans wanted them. Sergeant Katie Monroe commanded the 2nd Fire Team from an elevated position overlooking the hub. She had 20 soldiers with her, all armed with heavy weapons and plenty of ammunition. When the first Vthkai warriors entered the open space, she gave the order to fire. The effect was devastating. Aliens fell by the dozens as concentrated fire poured down from multiple directions. They tried to retreat, but more soldiers blocked the corridors behind them. They tried to advance, but every forward step cost them lives. They were trapped in a crossfire with no cover and no escape. Sub-Commander Dreth was among the warriors caught in the hub. He pressed himself against a pillar and watched his comrades die around him. This was not a battle anymore. This was an execution. A human soldier appeared beside him, moving so quietly that Dreth did not hear her approach until she pressed a weapon against his head. "Drop your weapon," Corporal Tiffany Reyes said calmly. "You are now a prisoner." Dreth let his rifle fall to the ground. He had seen enough death for one day. Outside the asteroid, the human rescue fleet engaged the Crimson Fang. Captain Greg Patterson commanded the destroyer Relentless from its bridge, coordinating the attack with cold precision. "Target their engines first," Patterson ordered. "I want that ship disabled, not destroyed. We need prisoners for interrogation." The Relentless and its escort vessels unleashed a barrage of missiles and energy weapons. The Crimson Fang was a powerful warship. but it was designed for attacking defenseless colonies, not fighting military vessels. Its shields flickered under the assault. War Commander Celtrix watched his ship take damage and felt despair settling into his heart. Everything had gone wrong. His easy conquest had become a nightmare. His warriors were dying. His ship was failing. His career was over. War Commander, his communications officer said, "The humans are hailing us. They demand our surrender." Celtrix wanted to refuse. Every instinct told him to fight to the death rather than submit to these primitives. But he looked at his crew, at the fear in their eyes, at the damage reports flooding his screens. If he continued fighting, they would all die. "Accept their terms," he said quietly. "Tell them we surrender." Inside Forge 7, the battle ended moments later. The surviving Vthkai threw down their weapons and raised their hands in a universal gesture of submission. Less than 200 remained from the original 800, who would launch the assault. Commander Garrett walked through the central hub, stepping over alien bodies, and approached the prisoners. Her uniform was torn and stained with blood, both human and alien. Her face showed exhaustion, but also satisfaction. "Secure them," she ordered. "Separate the officers from the regular soldiers. We will want to interrogate them separately." Sub-Commander Dreth was brought before her, his hands bound behind his back. He looked at the human woman who had orchestrated his defeat and saw something in her eyes that terrified him. Not hatred, not anger, just calm professionalism. She had destroyed his forces the way another person might complete a routine task. "You speak our language?" Lisa asked. "Yes," Dreth replied. "We studied your species before the attack. We thought we understood you. You were wrong. Yes, we were very wrong." Sergeant Derek Cole approached with a damage report. 12 wounded, Commander. No fatalities. The aliens lost approximately 600 warriors, with 200 captured. Lisa nodded slowly, processing the numbers. 40 humans against 800 aliens. 600 enemy dead. 0 friendly deaths. It was the kind of victory that belonged in training simulations, not real battles. But this had been a real battle. And they had won. Captain Patterson's voice came through the restored communication system. "Commander Garrett, this is Captain Patterson of the Relentless. The enemy vessel has surrendered. Are you secure down there?" "Secure and holding," Lisa replied. "We have approximately 200 prisoners, including several officers. Requesting immediate medical evacuation for our wounded. Medical teams are already on their way. And Commander, outstanding work. You and your people just made history." Lisa looked around at her soldiers. They were tired, wounded, and covered in the evidence of brutal combat. But they were alive, all of them. "Just doing our jobs, Captain," she said. It was a good drill. The communication channel went silent for a moment. Then Patterson's voice returned, filled with disbelief. "Did you just call this a drill?" Lisa allowed herself a small smile. "We have been training for alien invasion scenarios for years, Captain. Today, we finally got to test our methods against the real thing." The results were satisfactory. Across the galaxy, aboard a massive space station that served as the Vthkai Dominion's central command, High Prelate Vorith received a transmission from the Crimson Fang. He read the battle report 3 times, certain there must be some mistake. 800 warriors sent to capture a mining station, 600 dead, 200 captured, 0 humans killed. How is this possible? He whispered. His advisors had no answer. None of them had ever heard of a defeat so complete, so humiliating, so utterly one-sided. The Vthkai had conquered dozens of species, and none had ever inflicted casualties like this. What kind of species was humanity? Vorith did not know, but he was suddenly very afraid to find out. 3 weeks had passed since the battle at Forge 7. The asteroid outpost had been evacuated. its damaged sections sealed, its secrets preserved for future study. The survivors of Blackfire Squadron had returned to Earth as heroes, though most of them preferred to avoid the attention. Commander Lisa Garrett stood in a quiet conference room in Earth's unified government headquarters, delivering her final report to a small audience of military and political leaders. Admiral Marcus Webb sat in the front row, his face still showing the stress of those terrible hours when he could only watch and hope. In summary, Lisa said, the enemy forces demonstrated significant technological advantages, including energy weapons and personal shielding that exceeded our current capabilities. However, their tactical flexibility was poor, their adaptability was limited, and their training for ground combat was clearly inadequate. You killed 600 of them with 40 soldiers, a general said from the back of the room. That suggests more than inadequate training. They expected Myers, Lisa replied simply. They found soldiers. The element of surprise worked in our favor. And if they had known what they were attacking? Lisa considered the question carefully. They would have sent more ships, more warriors, and a better plan. The outcome might have been different, but I believe my people would have made them pay a heavy price regardless. The room fell silent. Everyone present understood what she was really saying. Humanity had been lucky this time. The next time might not be so easy. Secretary General Linda Castillo entered the room, and everyone rose to their feet. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had led Earth's unified government for 12 years, guiding humanity through expansion into the solar system and beyond. Now she faced a challenge that made everything else seem simple. Please, sit, taking her place at the head of the table. Commander Garrett, thank you for your service. Your team performed beyond all expectations. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Castillo turned to the other leaders in the room. As you all know, the Vthkai have requested diplomatic negotiations. Their ambassador arrives tomorrow. Before that meeting, I need to understand exactly what we are dealing with. Admiral Webb activated a display screen showing the results of prisoner interrogations. The Vthkai Dominion is a multi-species empire that has existed for over 2,000 years. They have conquered 37 intelligent species through military force. Their standard approach is to identify vulnerable targets, overwhelm them with superior numbers, and absorb the survivors into their workforce. Slaves, Castillo said flatly. Essentially, yes. The conquered species serve the Dominion in various capacities, but none have any real freedom or rights. And they thought we would be another easy conquest. They did. Our remote location, small population, and relatively primitive technology made us appear to be an ideal target. War Commander Celtrix chose Forge 7 specifically because it looked like the softest target in human space. Castillo allowed herself a thin smile. He chose poorly. The next day, Ambassador Seleth of the Vthkai Dominion arrived on Earth under heavy escort. He was smaller than the warriors who had attacked Forge 7, with lighter scales and more eyes. He walked with the careful steps of someone who expected danger around every corner. Secretary General Castillo met him in a formal reception hall, surrounded by guards and advisors. The atmosphere was tense, filled with the weight of recent violence and uncertain futures. Ambassador Seleth, Castillo began. Your people attacked a human installation without warning or provocation. 600 of your warriors died. 200 more are in our custody. Your flagship was captured. I am curious to hear what you have to say. Seleth lowered his head in a gesture that might have been submission or respect. I speak for the High Prelate and the entire Dominion when I say that the attack on your facility was a tragic mistake. We did not understand what we were facing. We offer sincere apologies and wish to negotiate terms for peace. You attacked us because you thought we were weak, Castillo said coldly. You wanted to enslave our people, the way you have enslaved dozens of other species. Now you want peace because you discovered we can fight back. Yes, Salith admitted. That is accurate. His honesty surprised the humans in the room. They had expected excuses and deflections, not direct admission of guilt. The Dominion has existed for 2,000 years, Salith continued. In that time, we have never encountered a species like yours. The defenders of your facility fought with skill and courage that our analysts cannot explain. 40 soldiers against 800 warriors, and not a single defender died. This is unprecedented. We train hard, Castillo said simply. We have seen your training records. We recovered data from the facility before the survivors were extracted. Salith paused, and something like fear crossed his alien features. The installation we attacked was a training center for your elite soldiers. A place where you simulate alien invasions to prepare your warriors for exactly what happened. Correct. The soldiers who defeated us were your best. The finest warriors your species produces. Also correct. Salith took a deep breath. I must ask a question, Secretary General. The answer will determine the future relationship between our peoples. Ask. How many facilities like Forge 7 exist? How many elite warriors does humanity possess? The room went completely silent. Castillo studied the alien ambassador for a long moment, weighing her response. She could lie and make humanity seem weaker than it was. She could tell the full truth and reveal military secrets. Or she could find a middle path. Enough, she said finally. Salith's eyes widened. Enough? Enough to defend ourselves. Enough to respond to any threat. Enough to ensure that what happened at Forge 7 can happen again, anywhere in human space, at any time. The ambassador absorbed this information slowly. He understood what she was really saying. Humanity was not a soft target. Humanity was not an easy conquest. Humanity was a species that trained its warriors to fight against impossible odds and win. Then I believe we have much to discuss, Salith said quietly. The Dominion wishes to avoid further conflict with your species. We propose a formal peace treaty, mutual recognition of territory, and the return of all prisoners. We will consider your proposal, Castillo replied. But understand this clearly, Ambassador. We did not start this conflict. We simply ended it. If your people ever threaten us again, the next battle will not be 40 soldiers against 800 warriors. It will be the full might of human military power against anyone who attacks our homes and our people. She leaned forward, her eyes hard as steel. And you have seen what our elite can do. Imagine what happens when we stop holding back. Salith nodded slowly, understanding perfectly. The Vthkai had thought they were attacking prey. They had discovered they were poking a sleeping predator. The negotiations that followed were productive. Peace was established. Prisoners were exchanged. The Dominion agreed to stay far from human space. And humanity agreed not to pursue retaliation for the unprovoked attack. But the true impact of the battle at Forge 7 spread far beyond diplomatic agreements sought within months. The Vthkai shared intelligence about humanity with every species in their network. The story of 40 humans defeating 800 elite warriors spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Species that had never heard of Earth suddenly learned to fear it. Humanity's reputation transformed overnight. No longer were they unknown primitives from a distant star. Now they were the species that trained its soldiers to fight alien invasions. The species that refused to surrender against impossible odds. The species that turned a training exercise into a slaughter. Commander, Lisa Garrett returned to Forge 7 after repairs were completed. She walked through the corridors where her people had fought and bled, and she thought about the future that battle had created. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe. They had neighbors now, some friendly and some hostile. But all of them, every single species that learned about the battle at the isolated outpost, understood one simple truth. Humans were not to be underestimated, and that lesson had only cost the Vthkai 600 lives to learn.